Captain Sarah Hale's boots clanged heavily against the metallic floor as she walked up to the central podium. The room fell silent, the murmur of dozens of alien voices fading into nothing. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy, some humanoid, some barely recognizable, all looked at her with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. She had seen their faces many times before, the detached arrogance, the assumption that their advanced technology and centuries of peace made them invulnerable. She stood still for a moment, surveying the assembly. There was a time when humanity might have hesitated, might have deferred to the wisdom of those who had learned to live without war. But that time was long past. She had seen too much in her years of service to be fooled by their diplomacy. "This council," Hale began, her voice calm but unyielding, "has forgotten what war looks like." She glanced at the holographic display projected above her, showing a fragmented map of galaxy sectors, some of which had already fallen to unknown invaders. "Your intelligence networks are focused on the threat of unknown enemies. But I'm telling you, you're not prepared for what's coming." The room shifted uncomfortably. A few of the alien representatives exchanged wary glances, some visibly trying to suppress their doubts. Hale's reputation as a war hero had preceded her, but her warnings were often dismissed as the lingering concerns of a soldier past her prime. Yet in her piercing gaze, they saw something else, a quiet fury tempered by experience. "You think yourselves above the need for force, that you can outtalk, outthink, or outlast any adversary. But you haven't faced humanity." Her words came with a deliberate pause, as if the weight of history itself rested on each syllable. "We fight for survival, and when we are pushed to the brink, we unleash a force so terrifying that even your greatest weapons will falter. We do not yield." One of the council members, an imposing figure with a dozen eyes and a tentacled body, shifted uneasily. "Your species' history is littered with violence. We understand the concept of war, Captain Hale, but those days are over." "Are they?" Hale's voice grew sharper, her gaze unwavering. "You don't know what it's like to face extinction. You haven't had to defend your homes against an enemy you cannot understand. Humanity has been through the fire and emerged stronger each time. And if you ignore the threat to us, if you underestimate our resolve, you will regret it." A cold silence swept through the room, broken only by the occasional hum of the station's ventilation system. The alien representatives exchanged looks, the seeds of doubt finally beginning to take root. Hale turned to leave, her message delivered. But just before she exited, she added, "You've been warned. If humanity is pushed too far, we will bring our wrath, and you'll wish you had listened." With that, she left the chamber, her steps echoing in the hall, leaving the council to contemplate what they had so easily ignored. Lieutenant Jacob Kincaid's hands trembled as he clutched the comlink, his voice hoarse as he spoke into the static-filled transmission. "Command, this is Lieutenant Kincaid, 7th Division. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Hostile forces have arrived." "They." The line cut off, and Kincaid's heart raced as he scanned the desolate landscape around him. The once bustling human colony on Tarsus V was now a war zone. Explosions rocked the ground, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. The peaceful world, known for its thriving multicultural settlements, had been reduced to nothing more than a battleground. Buildings that had stood for decades were now collapsing in flames, their once pristine walls crumbling under the force of the enemy's assault. He moved through the chaos, stepping over rubble and broken equipment as he tried to make his way to the colony's command center. His mind raced. Who had done this? The attackers were unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Their ships were sleek, black, and angular, their weapons precise and overwhelming. They had no mercy, no hesitation. It was as if the entire colony had been a target. Every structure, every inhabitant, lay bare for destruction. Kincaid ducked into the remains of a nearby building, the air thick with smoke. He activated his comms again, trying to reach command. "This is Lieutenant Kincaid. Colony is lost. Request immediate evac. His voice caught in his throat as he watched a pair of alien ships fly overhead, their weapons lighting up the sky. The ships moved with terrifying coordination, as if the destruction of this world was already a foregone conclusion. The transmission sputtered, then went silent. He glanced at the flashing lights of his damaged comm device, then back at the horizon, where the enemy's fleet loomed like a shadow over the burning ruins of the colony. His stomach churned as he realized. This wasn't a random raid. This was an assault designed to send a message. The enemy's forces were too many, too powerful. The overwhelming firepower they wielded suggested they had known the colony's defenses were no match for them. The weapons, the tactics, they were precise, surgical, like a predator taking down its prey without hesitation. And humanity. They had never seen this kind of aggression before, not on this scale. His comm device crackled to life again, a familiar voice cutting through the noise. Kincaid, this is Major Lawson. We're pulling out. Get to the evac point. Now. Kincaid hesitated, looking one last time at the crumbling colony. The evacuation wouldn't be enough. The enemy had already destroyed everything. Command, he said, voice steady now despite the terror gnawing at him. We need to retaliate. We can't let this stand. But he knew in his heart that the Council's indecision would lead to more bloodshed. And the humans, they were done waiting. Back on Earth, Captain Hale stood in the briefing room, the weight of her years in service pressing down on her shoulders. It had been less than a day since the attack on Tarsus V, and already the Council's inaction was starting to feel like a betrayal. The young officers under her command paced nervously as they awaited the latest orders from command. Hale's fingers traced the edge of the table, a familiar gesture when she was deep in thought. The Council was still pushing for diplomacy. Despite the evidence, the destroyed colony, the cries for help from the survivors, their hands were tied by politics. The message was clear: do nothing that might escalate the situation further. Her jaw clenched. She had seen enough to know that this wasn't just a minor conflict. Humanity had been attacked, and their response would determine not just the survival of their colonies, but their place in the galaxy. She turned toward the officers. Are we just going to wait for them to come to us? She asked, her voice low and controlled, but laced with frustration. We already know what's happening. They attacked us with no warning, and the Council wants us to sit back and negotiate. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. They had all been through similar training, years of preparation for just this kind of scenario, but none of them were ready for what was coming. They were human, after all, and humans were not known for standing idly by when pushed too far. We can't just wait, Lieutenant Kincaid said, his voice rough from the day's battle. The Council's orders are clear. We stand by for further diplomatic talks, but there's no way this is going to end with talks. They'll just keep coming. Hale nodded, her face grim. Exactly. And while they decide what to do, more colonies are going to burn. The weight of her words hung in the air. She had been there, on the front lines, watching as entire worlds were reduced to dust by enemies who had no compassion. But this time, it wasn't just about saving lives. It was about sending a message that humanity would never allow itself to be weak, to be seen as vulnerable. They had been underestimated for too long. We're not waiting any longer, Hale said, her voice now steel. Get the fleet ready. We're taking the fight to them. Kincaid's eyes widened. Captain, the Council. The Council doesn't control us. I don't answer to them anymore, Hale interrupted. Humanity has stood by for far too long while others waged wars in our name. Now it's our turn to show the galaxy who we are. The officers straightened, some nodding in agreement, others still uncertain. But one thing was clear. The resolve in Hale's eyes was contagious. They could sense it. This wasn't just about victory anymore. It was about making sure no one ever underestimated humanity again. The captain turned, heading for the door, her voice unwavering. We're not asking for permission. We're doing this our way. As the doors slid shut behind her, the officers began to move with renewed purpose. Humanity was about to make a stand. And no matter the cost, they would show the galaxy that when they were pushed, they would fight back with everything they had. The Vengeance moved like a shadow through the void, its sleek, battle-worn hull reflecting the distant stars as it sped toward the enemy's coordinates. Captain Hale stood at the command deck, her eyes fixed on the vast expanse ahead, her mind working through the next steps. They were outnumbered, yes, but humanity had something the enemy didn't: an unrelenting will to survive. Her officers stood at their posts, preparing for their first strike. Kincaid was at communications, his face set with determination. Other crew members were working frantically, coordinating with the scattered remnants of the human fleet that had also defied the Council's orders to wait. The Galactic fleet was small, but it was driven by a single purpose: revenge. "We'll be entering their fleet's perimeter in 10 minutes, Captain," Kincaid reported, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Good," Hale replied, her voice cold and focused. "We hit them hard and fast." No hesitation. The enemy ships loomed ahead, sharp-edged, imposing, and ready for a battle they hadn't anticipated. They hadn't expected the humans to fight back, let alone strike first. The reports on their capabilities were daunting, but Hale wasn't interested in reports. She was interested in action. Target their fleet's central command ship. "If we cripple their leadership, we can throw them into chaos," Hale ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. "Then we deal with their support vessels one by one. No quarter." The Vengeance shook as its first volley of plasma shots tore through the darkness, streaking toward the alien fleet. The enemy ships immediately reacted, their energy shields flickering to life, but they were too slow. The humans had already anticipated their move, firing in rapid succession, overwhelming their defenses with precision strikes. Explosions lit up the void as the first alien ship crumpled under the barrage. The Vengeance sailed through the wreckage, its advanced weapons tracking and targeting with pinpoint accuracy, outclassing the enemy in both speed and agility. The alien ships tried to regroup, but the humans were already on them, flanking them, slicing through their formation like a knife through paper. Kincaid's voice rang out over the comms. "Captain, their central command ship is taking damage. Shields are failing." "Good," Hale said, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Push harder. Make them feel every ounce of humanity's rage." The fleet of humans, though smaller, fought with a brutal efficiency that took the alien forces by surprise. Despite their advanced technology, the enemy was struggling to adapt to the unpredictability of human tactics. The aliens fought with cold, calculated precision, but the humans fought with heart, each strike carrying the weight of every colony lost, every life extinguished by their hands. "Enemy flagship is disabled, Captain," Kincaid reported. "They're retreating." Hale nodded. "Not so fast. Pursue them. They need to understand that this isn't over yet." Humanity's first strike had been a success. The enemy had been taken off guard, but it was only the beginning. This was just a taste of what was to come. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity would never be underestimated again. The silence in the alien capital was deafening. The council hall, a vast structure with towering spires that reached toward the sky like the bones of some ancient forgotten creature, had never felt so heavy. The alien leaders sat at a massive circular table, their eyes narrowing as they took in the reports from their fleet. What had started as a well-coordinated, swift invasion was rapidly spiraling into something they hadn't prepared for. Captain Hale, a grizzled alien general named Vather, hissed from the far end of the table. His reptilian features twisted in disgust as he read the transmission from the battle. "The humans. They're relentless. The Vengeance destroyed our flagship in less than an hour, and their tactics, they're unpredictable. We've never encountered anything like it." A quiet murmur rippled through the council, and it was clear that the alien leaders were struggling to comprehend the scope of the situation. These humans, foolish, young, and primitive, had caused them more harm in a single engagement than they had expected in a full-scale war. One of the other council members, an elegant figure with translucent skin and a voice like a gentle wind, spoke up. "We should attempt to negotiate with them. There's no need for further escalation. They've struck back, yes, but they're still a minor species in the grand scheme. We can offer them something. Peace, reparations, something to bring them back into line." Vathor snorted, his tongue flicking out in a derisive gesture. "Peace. After they've humiliated us, they've shown their teeth now. You think they will listen to our pleas? No, we must show them that they do not get to decide the terms of this war. They will learn their place." The council chamber fell into a tense silence as the debate continued, but one voice, quiet and firm, cut through the rest. It belonged to Elanthar, a strategist whose race had long been considered the masterminds of warfare. "You underestimate them. Yes, they are small in numbers, but their resolve, their spirit, we cannot predict it. They are dangerous in a way we do not understand. We made a mistake by thinking they would submit. But what choice do we have now?" Vathor snarled, his clawed hands slamming against the table. "Their forces are already hunting down our support ships, and our fleet is disorganized. We cannot afford to fight them in the open any longer." Elanthar remained calm. "Then we must change tactics. We will not fight them on their terms. Let them come. We will trap them. But we must be smart, no more underestimating them. If they think they've seen humanity's wrath, they've only scratched the surface." There was a quiet understanding among the leaders now. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for retribution was at hand. They would regroup, adapt, and face the humans on their own terms. But they knew that the humans' fight was far from over. The war had shifted, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not been idle since their first strike. After the overwhelming success of the Vengeance's attack on the alien fleet's flagship, Captain Hale and her crew had pushed forward, hunting down alien vessels one by one. But what had started as a swift, calculated retaliation had quickly morphed into something more, something personal. The alien threat had ignited a fire within humanity that could not be quenched by simple diplomacy. Hale sat at her command station, the dim light of the tactical screens reflecting off her face as she studied the movement of alien ships across the sector. She had expected them to retaliate, but their response was more complex than she had anticipated. The aliens were regrouping, adapting. They were pulling their fleets into the farthest reaches of the system, drawing humanity into their territory, forcing them to play on the enemy's terms. "Captain," Kincaid's voice cut through the silence, "we're getting word from the survivors on Tarsus 5. They're saying the aliens are gathering reinforcements, more ships than we've ever seen. They're not just trying to wipe us out anymore. They're preparing for an invasion." "Damn it," Hale muttered, her mind already racing through the possible scenarios. "They're trying to overwhelm us. They're pulling every ship they can find, hoping to crush us with sheer force." "Should we regroup with the fleet?" Kincaid asked, his concern palpable in his voice. Hale shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "No, we can't let them dictate the terms of the fight. We need to hit them where it hurts, fast, before they can amass more strength. We need to force them into a position where they can't run." Kincaid paused for a moment, then nodded. "What's the plan?" "We'll split the fleet," Hale said, her voice a controlled, unyielding command. "Kincaid, you'll lead a strike team against their reinforcement staging points. We take out their supply lines, their shipyards, anything they're building. Disrupt their ability to keep up the fight." "And what about you, Captain?" Hale's gaze darkened as she stared at the tactical display. "I'll take the Vengeance and strike their rear command ships. They won't expect us to hit their home base. We make them question their strategy, make them wonder if they're safe anywhere." Kincaid gripped the edge of the console. "Understood. I'll assemble the team." Hale leaned back in her chair for a brief moment, a deep breath escaping her lips. This was no longer just about survival. It was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy, showing that when pushed to the edge, they would not back down. They would not be eradicated. They would fight with everything they had, no matter the odds. As the Vengeance and its fleet set course for their next strike, a quiet resolve settled over Hale. She knew that the aliens, in their arrogance, had made a critical mistake. They thought the war was over. But for humanity, it was just beginning. And they were only getting started. The Vengeance moved silently through the depths of space, its hull bathed in the eerie glow of distant stars. Captain Hale stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed ahead as her fleet followed closely behind. The quiet hum of the engines was the only sound, but beneath the calm surface, a storm was brewing. The enemy had no idea what was coming. "All units are in position, Captain," Kincaid reported from his station, his voice steady despite the tension hanging thick in the air. "We're ready to launch the assault on their command hub." "Good," Hale replied, her voice low and determined. "This is our chance. Once we hit them, they'll know that humanity isn't just a target. It's a force to be reckoned with." The alien command hub loomed ahead, a vast fortress built into the heart of a massive asteroid field. Hundreds of enemy ships were docked, preparing for the next stage of their invasion. But Hale had no intention of letting them move forward with their plans. "Send the signal to the fleet. This is it. Full assault on my mark." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, every member aware of the importance of the mission. The battle ahead would determine everything: the survival of humanity's colonies, the future of their species in the galaxy, and perhaps even the survival of their entire race. There was no turning back. Hale gripped the armrests of her chair as the ship shuddered slightly, feeling the force of the weapons being prepared. They were about to break into the heart of the alien war machine. Mark. Immediately, the Vengeance and its fleet surged forward, cutting through the asteroid field toward the alien stronghold. Laser fire erupted as they encountered the first wave of enemy ships, but the humans had already anticipated the aliens' moves. Their ships darted and weaved, evading the alien strikes with precision, returning fire with a fury that sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. "Enemy command ship is in range, Captain," Kincaid called out. "We're ready to strike." "Do it," Hale said firmly. The Vengeance fired, its plasma cannons lighting up the darkness as the first volley hit the enemy flagship. The alien ship's shields flared under the impact, but the humans were relentless. They fired again and again, targeting weak points and breaking through the shields. The flagship began to crack and splinter under the barrage, and within moments, it erupted into a ball of fire, its massive hull disintegrating as it was torn apart. "We've got them," Kincaid muttered, but Hale wasn't celebrating yet. There was still more to do. "Not yet," she said, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "We've wounded them, but we need to finish this." As the alien forces regrouped, Hale saw the shift in their tactics. They had underestimated humanity's fury, but now they were scrambling to maintain order. It was the perfect opportunity. The fleet of humans pressed on, striking with precision, cutting down the enemy's ships like a blade through butter. But there was still something looming, a shadow on the horizon. Hale knew the aliens would have one last trick up their sleeve. The war was far from over, but humanity had made it clear. They were no longer the underdogs. They were fighters, and they would not go down quietly. The battlefield was a wreck. The void of space was lit by the smoldering remains of destroyed alien ships, their twisted, charred wreckage drifting slowly among the asteroids. The Vengeance and its fleet had decimated the enemy's command hub, but despite the overwhelming damage, the alien forces weren't retreating. Instead, they were preparing for a final counterattack, an act of desperation that could either break humanity or secure its place in the galaxy forever. Captain Hale stood tall on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching as the remaining alien vessels regrouped. Their numbers had dwindled, but the remaining ships were unlike any they'd faced before. Massive, heavily armored, and bristling with weapons, These ships were built for one thing: to annihilate. We've taken down their flagships, but they've got one final fleet grouping left, Kincaid said, his voice laced with urgency. They're massing everything they've got. Hale's eyes never left the screen, her mind already calculating their next move. She could feel the weight of the decision before her. The humans had pushed this far, but now the enemy was forcing them into a corner. A single wrong move, and the entire fleet could be obliterated. We don't retreat. We go in, Hale said, her voice resolute. They think they can crush us with brute force. They haven't learned yet what happens when you push humanity too far. The officers around her nodded, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The Vengeance and its fleet had taken heavy losses, but every single one of them knew what was at stake. This was more than just survival. This was about sending a message the Galaxy would never forget. Helm, full speed ahead, Hale ordered. All units, target their lead ship. We take down the first one, and the rest will fall. The Vengeance surged forward, cutting through the wreckage of the previous battle, and charging toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The alien ships, massive and imposing, fired without hesitation, but humanity's forces had learned to move faster, to hit harder. The human fleet darted in and out of the alien ships' firing arcs, striking their enemies with ruthless efficiency. First ship shields are down, Kincaid shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Captain, they're trying to retreat to their last stronghold. Not on my watch, Hale growled. We finish this now. With a final, deafening volley, the Vengeance struck the heart of the alien flagship, shattering its defenses and sending it into a tailspin toward the abyss of space. As the ship exploded in a brilliant flash, a sense of finality settled over the battlefield. The remaining alien ships, now leaderless and crippled, scattered in every direction, their morale shattered. The human fleet did not relent. They pursued, hunting down every last alien ship, their resolve unwavering. It was over. The Galaxy had witnessed the fury of humanity, and it would never forget. As the final shots rang out, Captain Hale allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. They had done it. The war was over, and humanity had not only survived, it had triumphed. The stars, once silent witnesses to the vastness of the galaxy, now stood as silent guardians of a new era. Humanity had shown the universe that when pushed to the brink, they were not to be underestimated. They were a force to be reckoned with, a force that would never back down. And that was a lesson the Galaxy would never forget.